SparkMap is built and run by a team of data analysts, programmers, and GIS technicians who collect, clean, and aggregate data from reliable secondary sources. We make these data available through two powerful tools, the Community Needs Assessment and MapRoom. Need to build a community needs assessment or gather more data about your community? Use SparkMap to spend less time researching and more time implementing positive change. The following video will provide examples of how you can use SparkMap. To keep up with SparkMap, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and social media accounts.
And so, really quickly before we jump in, know that SparkMap is a product of the University of Missouri's Center for Applied Research and Engagement Systems, CARES for short. And CARES is a group that's been around for over 30 years, creating mapping and reporting tools for folks across healthcare, nonprofit, and government sectors. And so, SparkMap's been around for about 5 years, and it was our means of making some of our tools accessible to individuals. So, whether that be grant writers or consultants or just tiny groups that don't necessarily need a tool for their entire organization. Um, and so, those tools that we make available are, like I said, the needs assessment tool and the map room. And we are going to start with this needs assessment tool. And so the needs assessment has three pretty simple steps. First, you're going to select a location of interest. Then you're going to select data. And then step three, the tool kind of does the work for you and generates a report. So to start, I am going to select a state from my list here, and I'm going to do Tennessee. I could scroll down to get to Tennessee, or I can just up here in the filter list section start typing. And there it is. I'm going to click to add it. And then I'm going to get a list of all the counties in Tennessee, and I'm going to do Franklin County. So again, I could scroll down to get to Franklin, or I can just start typing Franklin County, Tennessee. And so as you can see, I selected Franklin County, Tennessee, and my selection has showed up over here on the right under my assessment location. So now I'm going to move to my next step, which is our data indicator selection. I can do this by clicking this tab here at the top or by clicking this data indicators button at the bottom right. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now this is the fun part. This is our list of data indicators. So what we do is we collect national secondary data from over 100 sources. So the US Census Bureau, various CDC surveys, FCC, all that good stuff. And so we take that data, we pull it all together, we clean it up, and we put it all in one place. So all the data listed in this report is going to be as up to date as possible. And it is updated on a rolling basis. And so some of our indicators update on a yearly basis. Some are more frequent, like monthly. And so know that those indicators are kind of continually rolling along. And I'll show you where to see news around indicator updates on our site here in just a bit. Okay. So as you can see here, we have all of these nice categories, ranging from demographics to housing and families to health behaviors, outcomes, and workforce. To view any of the indicators within a given category, you are just going to click the little drop-down arrow beside a category name. You'll notice that some of these indicators are grayed out, and this is because they are available to our paid folks. All of the bolded indicators are available for free. Also note that we are a nonprofit with a public good mission. We try to make as much of our stuff as free as possible, and we always will. And these indicators that you cannot access in the report are accessible for free in the map room, and we'll go through how to use that map room in just a bit. Now, if we wanted to add all of the indicators from one section to our report, you would just click the checkbox beside the section name to select those indicators. If you wanted to add all the indicators we've got, and for our free folks, that's about 100 indicators. For our top tier of subscriptions, that's over 420 indicators. We can click the Select All Indicators button here, and that's going to select everything. Or you can go in and hand pick indicators to add. So let's say we are particularly interested in income and economics, and we want to look at population below the federal poverty level. I can go here and click the checkbox beside this specific indicator, and it's going to add to my report. You can do that for as many indicators as you like, but for now, let's just stick with this population below the FPL. Now, note that before you add an indicator to your report, you can click this I button. It's going to give you a nice pop-up that gives you a bit of information about what you're going to find once you add that indicator. So it's going to tell you the supplemental data that you're going to see. We always try to provide data by age, gender, race, and ethnicity when available. And then we're going to link you back to the data source. So in this case, it's the American Community Survey. And so then to generate our report, we're just going to click this Reports tab up here, or way down here at the bottom, the little Reports arrow button. And then it's going to think for a second, and you're going to have your nice report. So for each indicator you selected over in step 2, you are going to have a nice bold title. You're going to have a stem sentence or paragraph that gives you a bit of contextual information, as well as instructions around interpretation and any notes about the data or the data source. We're then going to give you the county level data, and we're always going to benchmark you to the state in the United States. We also provide these nice little screenshotable benchmark dials when relevant. And so it gives you a nice little glimpse of how you're measuring up compared to the state. We always benchmark to the state here. We're also going to link you back to the data source beneath this table. Then we're going to give you a link to a map beneath each indicator heading. So as we can see, our population and poverty percent-wise for all of Franklin County is a bit lower than our average for Tennessee. However, there seems to be, some disparity between some different census tracts here. And we can see that our map here is showing us by census tract what the distribution of population below the poverty level looks like. And we have a tract up here that part of it's under 10%. And then we have this nice dark area here where over 20% of the population in this tract falls below the FPL. And so this is something to investigate. We can click this map to jump into the map room, and I'll show you all how to do that here in a bit. Um, and then I'll also show you how we do have some means with some of our fancier versions of the report to get sub-county level data. Now going down, you can see we have our population and poverty by gender, by ethnicity, and by race. And we have our nice tables and charts that help you to visualize those data. Now, note with these breakout data that sometimes we have special breakouts depending on the data that we're looking at. So for example, I'm going to scroll back up here, go back to our data indicators list, and let's say we want to look at population with any disability. We'll go back to our report and that will load. And so we have our population with disability and the map's thinking. It'll load here in just a minute. And we have our breakouts, that I went through by gender, by age. We'll have race and ethnicity. But then we also have breakout by disability status, which is going to be really important, right? If you're wanting to learn more about your population with disability in your county, it's important to know if we're talking about, a large percentage of folks with ambulatory disabilities versus hearing or cognitive, right? And so know that we have all types of breakouts depending on the indicators that you're looking at. And you can view those again by also clicking that I button pop out that's going to list your supplemental data for you. A couple of other quick things to know with the report is that they're downloadable as PDFs, they're shareable as links, and that there are some options for customizing these reports a little bit. And now I'm going to actually swap browsers quickly, and I will jump us into a logged in version of the report so we can dive just a little deeper. All right. And so again, to get to this report, I'm going to click Create Community Needs Assessment, and we're going to start again. Now I'm logged into our highest subscription level, so our view is going to be a little different. As you can see, I have some options for some sub-county level reporting, right? I have this nice zip code list where I select a state and then it's going to give me a list of zip codes within it. And I have the option to use this Draw My Area tool or Pick from Map tool. But let's start first with another county level report, and we'll do a multi-county report. And so I'm going to do this for the state of Colorado. And again, I'm just typing to filter. And let's see, in let's do Larimer County. And then I know next to that county is Weld County. And so let's look at these two counties together. And let's do a different set of data indicators. So let's look at some physical environment indicators, and my full indicator list is available to me now that I am logged in, but I'm going to pick an indicator that is available to our free folks too. So if you're following along, you will be able to add this data. So I'm going to do air and water quality particulate matter 2.5. So this is going to be the particulate matter in the air that is, thinner than a strand of hair, that is really capable of penetrating like deep into your lungs and can be really harmful, right? And so I've selected that indicator and I am going to move over to my report. And again, right, we have our bold heading, our stem sentence, our table that's going to give me our total values for our report location, and then the values for each county that I selected. And then for the state in the United States, we have our benchmark dial that shows us our percentage of days exceeding our standards for particulate matter, and we're not doing great. And then again, we have our map. And for this indicator, we have trends over time from 2010 to 2020. And so we can see that for our report location and for Colorado, there was really quite a jump in 2019. Um, And so this is where it's always nice, right, to have some local knowledge to know, okay, what happened, what came into the area, what new potential new development or issue caused this dramatic rise, and is it still something that is of concern, right? But let's say, we're looking at these two counties, and again with our map, right, we have this really dark area where over 3% is above our NAAQ standards. And then we have some areas where we don't have that many percentages or that high of a percentage of days above the standard. And so let's say we're looking at Fort Collins, that's right here, kind of somewhere in the middle, and we want a more accurate estimate of our days above the standard. So what I can do is I can go back to my location tab, and we have a couple of different tools that we can use to get some sub-county level data. Now, I'm not going to focus on this since this is an introductory webinar, but I want you to know they're there in case it's of interest for later. So we're going to kind of go really quickly. Um, so I'm going to get myself to Fort Collins, Colorado. And with this Draw My Area tool, I could actually go in and draw an area of interest on my map by clicking and dragging. And then the tool is going to use a population weighted estimate to give you a value for the location that you drew. Then we also have this pick from map tool that again is for our paid subscribers, but I'll show you how to get some sub-county level data for free in the map room as well. And we are zoomed into Fort Collins still, and I can click this geographic type dropdown. And I have a variety of geographic types, right? From school districts to state house and senate districts to zip codes and city and town. So I'm going to click city and town, and then I'm going to click Fort Collins here. And then same as before, I'm going to move over to step 2, where I still have that indicator selected. And then I'm going to generate my report. And now it's going to look a little different. It's going to have my city or town listed in my table. Then it's still going to give you the data for the county into which it falls, the state, and the United States. And so Fort Collins over here is actually a little bit higher than our percentage was for Larimer County, but it was hard to tell, right? Just looking at that map where it was pretty light in contrast to some of those big dark spots where it was over 3%. Now, from this, you can do a couple things. I told you I would show you all how to jump into the map room, and so let's jump over there first. So to do that, I just clicked that little View Larger Map button, and now my map is thinking. And what it's going to do is it is going to load me up that same map with that same data, and it's going to go ahead and have me zoomed into Fort Collins. Note that our map room is usually a little bit faster. I am working with some slower internet today. Um, but here we go. It is waking up. And now we have this nice interactive map of our fine particulate matter levels in our area, and our report location is highlighted there. Now, if I had wanted to get here without coming from the report, I'll show you guys how to do that. And so I'm going to get rid of this really quick and go back to our home page that you see when you log in. And so from our home page, I am going to go down and click that map room button in the create dropdown. And this is going to take us to a big empty map. And so I'll show you how to get to your location of interest and add data. While it's kind of waking up here, I will give you a couple of important things to know about the map room. One is the map room is completely free. And so all of the data in the map room is available to anyone. We have no plans to change that. Two, unlike the needs assessment tool, which is continually being updated with new data, and so you want to say the PDF version if you want some historic data in the report, the map room houses historic and up-to-date data. And so there is, if you're looking for something old, come to the map room. We also have a lot more data in this map room than we do in the report. So the map room houses, it's a little less than 30,000 data layers, whereas the report, right, had those 400 plus data indicators. And so we have a lot of information to find here. So it looks like it is woken up and ready for us. And so I'm going to go down here to the bottom right, and I'm going to go back to Larimer County where we were. And so I'm going to do that by typing in my little search box here at the bottom right. And Larimer County showed up and it zooms us in. You can also zoom in this map using these plus and minus buttons or with your mouse. All right, now let's add some data. So there are a couple different ways we can add data to our map. One is going to be to search by keyword. So let's say we want our particulate matter data back. So it knew what I was going to say. I can type in my search word and then hit my search bar there. And it's going to give us our 43 different results. Note that some are a little bit older than our most up-to-date data, which is for 2020. And I'm going to do our fine particulate matter levels by tract. Also note these little I buttons beside the map layer name, similar to those I buttons that we saw over in the needs assessment tool. Again, you can click those to get a data description, as well as some information on the release cycle, and the data source. We're always going to link you back to that data source. And so then I clicked my checkbox to add it to my map, and then I clicked my little view legend box to jump back over to my map legend. Now, there are also some other ways to add data. So in addition to using the search bar, I'll go ahead and clear that search. You can browse by topic. So let's say I'm interested in data on education attainment. I can click my browse by topic, education, and then attainment and all students. And then I have all of our data related to education attainment listed for me right there. And again, I would just click my checkbox beside a layer name to add it to my map. We can also browse by source. And so let's say we're looking at this particulate matter data. We know that an increase in days with high exposure to this can be linked to things like asthma prevalence. So we could look at our asthma rates in this area, and we could say we know we want the Burfus asthma data. And so we have our behavioral risk factor surveillance system data here. We can click our drop down and go to health outcomes, chronic disease. And there we have it. We have our most up-to-date asthma from CDC Burfus Places 2023. And we'll click to add that to our map. And as you can see, there might be a bit of a correlation here. Now, note with this source list, it's really nice because I mentioned at the beginning, I believe that we pull from over 120 secondary sources. And if you want to see a nice list of what all those sources are and what data we have for each one, this is the place to go. It is a really fun list to interact with, and it keeps going and going and going. But now I am going to jump us back to our legend, and we're going to interact with these data a little bit and manipulate them. And so to do that, I'm just going to go over to my left-hand side and click that legend button. And right now I am looking at this asthma prevalence data by place, but I'm looking at the fine particulate matter data by census tract. So let's say I want these to match up a little bit better. Um, so to do that, I can just go to my geography toggle here. And as you can see, I have the option to view these data at the county level, the tract level, and the zip code level. Note that most of our map layers are going to have this option to change your geography level, and those geography levels are really going to range depending on the data source and what the data is. And so we have, some indicators where you might only be able to view those data at the state and county level, right? And you have some where you might be able to view at the school district level, the House and Senate levels, tract level, et cetera, et cetera. And so know that that's going to vary by source. And I can also show you, if you are looking for data available at a certain geography level, how to filter your searches for data to only return data that are at the geography you need. But for now, let's just swap this over to tract. We'll let it think for a second. There we go. And we have our tract level asthma prevalence data. So a couple of things we can do with this data. One, note that this map is interactive. And so you can click any area on your map and you can get a nice pop-up that's going to tell you the county that you've clicked on, the tract ID, um, your total adult population, and our percentage of that population that, according to Burfus, is going to have asthma, right? And so it's fun to click around and kind of investigate this, and we'll keep exploring. So another cool thing you can do with your map layers is you can add labels. And so it's going to think for a second. And now all of our census tracts are going to have our percentages labeled there. So you can kind of see at a glance where our kind of high values are and where our lower percentages are falling, right? And then we can also add more data if we want. And so I am, looking at our asthma prevalence here. I am thinking about, you know, do these folks have good access to care? Um, and so one way we could search for that is by thinking about primary care providers in the area, right? And so I am going to search primary care over here in our add data section. So I've entered my search. One thing I should note with the search bar is that we aren't quite as sophisticated as, say, Google. And so if you type in a kind of long-winded question or phrase, it might overwhelm our search just a little bit. And so keeping it to short words or phrases like poverty, primary care, transportation, are typically going to yield better results here. So, all right, I have searched for primary care, and I am going to look at our primary care physicians in the area um, from our National Provider Index. Now, note that when this got added to my map, it got popped down here in my legend below our asthma layer. So I'm just going to click and drag to bring it to the top. And now you can see I have a nice little point map showing me the locations of my primary care providers. And so we might, have some questions about this area over here in the dark blue where we have high asthma prevalence and we don't necessarily have a lot of providers right here handy. And we could think about, how is access to transportation in this area? Are these folks able to get where they need to go to get the care they need? I really, really like the provider data that we have in our site. And we have this type of data not just for primary care physicians, but for substance misuse and abuse providers, for mental health care providers, for dentists, for nurse practitioners. And it's pretty neat because you can click on any provider name and you are going to get the location and organization and name for that provider. And so something you could also do with this data or with any of the data in our map room is you can click this little dot, dot, dot button here and click download data. And if you ever wanted data for a specific area on your map, so I'm just going to draw a little rectangle, but know that we could draw a kind of polygon that lines up with, say, a county boundary, right? But I'll do a nice little rectangle so you don't have to watch me try to draw a polygon. I'm going to click and drag, and it's not going to let me. There we go. And then I am going to get a very large and nice list of the primary care providers in that area that I have just boxed in. It is exportable as a CSV. And again, you can do this for any of the map layers in the map room. And so, not quite as pretty as the reporting tool, but if you just need the data, that's an easy way to get it. You do have to go one layer at a time. For any folks who are interested at any point in pulling a lot of our data at one time and potentially plugging it into another tool, we do have an API and we are always happy to chat about our API hookup and pricing. Now, in addition to this, I wanted to look at one more layer. And for that, we can go over to our add data section again. And I was thinking about our uninsured population. Because, right, in addition to wondering if these folks have good access to care, also wondering, right, what does the affordability look like? Asthma is expensive if you don't have insurance. And so now our uninsured population has been added to our map, but it is down here at the very, very bottom, and it is pretty difficult to see. So what I am going to do is I am actually going to hide some of these map layers so that I can see the other one. So I'm going to do that by clicking that little map button. It's going to hide it from us. I could also just pull this uninsured population square up to the top so that I can see that a little bit better. So now we have our uninsured population. This is at the county level, and we are looking at percentages. So I can label that so we can see our nice percentages. We can also get this down again to say the tract or the zip code level. And so I'll start with tract. And we can see there are, some discrepancies here, like this area down here that a little over 20% of our population is uninsured. Now it's a relatively small population size, but still this is something of note. Now, like we were looking at earlier with that Burfus data, we can also change our data type, and it should be working just fine for our uninsured population data. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that and see how this changes our map a little bit. And so now we're looking at total values or estimates for uninsured population at the census tract level. Now, if we wanted to share this map at any point, I showed you where you could go to click share and then copy a link to your map. We also give you the option to export your maps as map only or with a legend, and we have a variety of nice file formats available to you there, so you get the export type you need. And then we also have some tools for manipulating these maps a little bit. So, for example, let's say I wanted to look at that asthma data and the uninsured population data alongside one another a little bit more closely. And that's hard to do since they are both kind of purplish polygon layer maps, right? So I'm going to go over to my tools and I'm going to use this swipe layer tool. And if I had other layers on my map that I didn't have hidden right now, I would go in and I would use this drop down to select my layers of interest. And then I can slide back and forth between these two maps and note some potential areas of overlap, right? Something else we can do in this map room that's pretty darn handy is the mask tool. So if you were using these maps for any sort of proposal or presentation where you're focusing on a very specific area. So Let's say we are looking at a specific county. I would go in and click this mask layer option from my tool list. I click my geography drop down, and then I select county from my options. And then I click my counties of interest. And what it's going to do is it is going to make those counties appear, and it is going to mask or hide all of my surrounding counties. If I clicked one I didn't mean to click, let's say I don't want to add Boulder, I can click there and remove it. And then when you go back to your legend, you have that mask there as a layer that you can add and remove as desired. We also have some pretty handy tools available here for things like generating walk scores. So looking at how walk friendly your area is, for drawing graphics onto your map. If you want to add any circles, arrows, or bells and whistles there. Um, and we have some tools that kind of help you look at specific topics. So, for example, our vulnerable populations footprint tool, which should actually be updated now to the 2020 to 2024 data, which is going to show you population below the poverty level and population with less than a high school diploma. And you can adjust those thresholds and look at areas where they overlap. It's a very handy tool, and it has a little quick report. Available with it as well. It wasn't showing on my map because it was stacked at the very bottom of my big old list of map layers right here. Now, a couple other things to note because I know I have gone through a lot of things very quickly. Thing number one is if you are curious about the big list of data that we have and want to know if we have the data you need, up here we have a nice data tab where you can go down and go to a community needs assessment indicator list or a map data list. The community needs assessment indicator list in particular is a handy resource because it allows you to filter between the indicators that are available for free in your report and the indicators that are available at our pro and premium subscription levels. Now, in addition to the data lists, we also have data news, which is where we are going to put data on, or we're going to put information on our data updates. And so here's the place to go to see what's new. In addition to that, I want to make sure that you guys are aware of our support library, which is pretty robust. And so in the support library, we have basic tutorials for each of the tools that walk you through step by step how to use them. And we also have tutorials for all of the special features and capabilities within those tools. And so, while we're always happy to answer a support chat and or walk you through a demo, we're hopeful that you'll find a lot of the things that you need here in the support library. Now, one last thing that I want to note before I open us up for questions is that creating a SparkMap account is completely free, and it can be pretty handy because when you have a SparkMap account, you can save your maps and reports to your SparkMap profile. And so you have this little person icon with my projects, and all of your reports and your maps that you create are going to be saved here so that you can open them up and pick up right where you started off. This is going to be really handy for the reporting tool because as our indicators update, right, you don't have to create a brand new report every time you come on to see your latest updates. You just have to click the Save button over here in the top right corner, give your report a name, and then you can log on, open your report, and get the most up-to-date version anytime you need it. And then for the map room, your saved maps are not going to auto update since we do keep the historic data there. But it is really nice to be able to save those maps, especially if you've added a lot of data to it and really spent some good time on it. And to save a map, all you have to do is, well, it's thinking for a second. You would click this My Maps button with the heart, and you would have a little save button here that would have an icon of your map that you have loaded. And then you would click that save button to save your map.
Thank you for learning more about SparkMap. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out via the contact form on sparkmap.org. Don't forget to subscribe.